Hey, party people, Techno here, and it's that time of the year again for the Sans Holiday Hack Challenge. This year's 2022 KringleCon is a pretty cool Middle Earth themed one. Here we are standing outside the courtyard to Santa's Castle, getting started with this. So I'm just going to go through, I'm going to walk through the challenges that I was able to solve and how I went about those. But as you're starting off here, if you were to do this yourself, if you haven't already, the first thing that you need to do is talk to Jingle Ringford here, get a little bit of background and context to what's going on, practice with the Cranberry Pi terminal you see sitting on the table there a little bit, and then you'll be instructed to go to the KTM to create your crypto wallet to store all of the Kringle coin that you'll be collecting throughout the course of this event. So let's go ahead and let's progress up to Santa's courtyard outside of the Kringle Castle itself. So in this case, the next thing you're going to want to do is talk to Santa, get some more of that background, the story, what's going on at the North Pole here this year. But as you walk around, you'll notice that we have these snow-covered hobbit huts. In the background here is that, for one reason or another that I don't particularly remember at this point, they are locked out of the Kringle Castle. It's blocked off. So the elves have decided to try and dig under the snow through these tunnels to get back into the Kringle Castle. In the course of doing so, they have discovered these other magical creatures, the flobbits and the sporks, if you catch the references there, right? And this isn't just a Middle-earth themed event. There are a lot of cool little Easter eggs from other fantasy and sci-fi references. If you wander into the correct room, you'll get a pretty cool Easter egg for Terry Pratchett's Discworld. But in any case, so let's start off by going down to our first challenge. And kind of what we're trying to achieve here is that we are looking to recover the 5 rings of powder. That we're going to do that by solving these various hacking challenges. So the first of those rings is going to be the Tolkien ring, and that's the room or the hall that we're heading to, is the Tolkien ring room to solve this first challenge. And then as we move through this video series, or as you move through the challenges on your own, recover that Tolkien ring and then further the other rings. I'm going to deviate a bit here into the Hall of Talks because while we're on our way there, I want to point out a couple things. So yeah, if you haven't already gathered, this is going to contain spoilers. So if you want to tackle these challenges yourself without any additional hints or the solutions being made available, then now's a good time to stop watching. So if we walk to the end of the Hall of Talks, what we will find is what I believe is the first chest. And these chests contain various goodies, mostly Kringle coin, as well as hints to the challenges for the blockchain-related challenges that are associated with the final ring. So there's where one of those chests lies. Like I said, I believe that's the first one that you can locate. So we'll head back into the tunnels here and continue to make our way to the Tolkien room. Head down this ladder. And you'll see off to the side here, well, we have another chest kind of sitting here in this open space. Now to get to that one, and kind of the key is to look for where these broken up pieces of rock are, what don't look to be solid walls. We can step off the ladder right here to the left, and then proceed to work our way through those hidden paths up to that chest. Again, collect those hints, Kringle coin goodies. And as we get to the bottom of the ladder, we'll see a very grumpy looking Grincham here. He's none too happy that we are trying to retrieve the rings of powder and effectively take those away from him. But here we are at the Tolkien ring room, and we are about to start the first challenge here, which is, if we take a look at our badge, this is going to be a pretty easy challenge, and it's Wireshark Practice. So we're going to get a little PCAP analysis action going on here. So what has occurred here is Sparkle Redberry has reason to believe that their laptop has been infected with some malware, and basically they just want us to take a look at this Wireshark capture to kind of determine if that is the case or not. So let's go ahead and jump into the Cranberry Pi terminal. Actually, before I do that, I'll mention that if you go back to the objectives here, what we'll be working with is this downloadable PCAP file, Suspicious PCAP. You can also solve this challenge in the Cranberry Pi terminal with T-Shark. I'm going to use Wireshark for for our purposes here. Once we log into the Cranberry Pi terminal, you'll see that you have your command line here, that if you want to work with those T-Shark commands, you certainly can. And then we also have our questions and our answer prompt up here at the top. So here again, we see this all started whenever whenever they clicked a link in their email, and can we help? So first question, can we help? I think the answer to that question is a yes. So we can definitely help with this problem. Now, the first real question to the challenge: there are objects in the PCAP file that can be exported by Wireshark and or T-Shark. What type of objects can be exported from this PCAP? So, okay, let's go ahead and jump over into our Wireshark, where we have our suspicious.pcap open. And what you can do in Wireshark is under File, you can go to Export Objects, and you'll have a few options here. So the first one that I typically check is usually HTTP, but of course you can look for other things like SMB. And if there's any files contained within this PCAP or any other objects that you can export, they will be located here. In SMB, we don't have any, but if we select HTTP, then we'll see that we have 3 file objects that we can export. So in this case, the answer to our first question is going to be HTTP. Now we're being asked, what is the name of the file name, or what is the file name of the largest file that we can export? So let's jump back to that export dialog box, and you'll see that we have a column here that gives us the size of these files. And at 808 kilobytes, app.php is certainly the largest file, so that's going to be our next answer. So here we will just pop in app.php and on to the next question. Now we want to know what packet number starts the app.php file. And again, we'll jump back to that export dialog, and the very first column conveniently gives us the packet number where these files start. So in the case of app.php, it's going to be 687 is going to be the first packet for that. So there's our next answer. And now we want to know what the IP address of that Apache server is, presumably the one that's serving up that app.php file. So for this, we're going to go and close our dialog box here for exporting, and we're going to jump back into the main capture. And what we can do is we can drill down into just that HTTP traffic with a simple filter, typing HTTP in the filter box up here. And we only have a few packets to look at. We can see the first packet here is a GET request for app.php to a 192.185.57.242. Presumably that would be our server, but we can verify that by looking at the response. And if we look at the hypertext transfer protocol data, you'll see server Apache right here. So that is going to be the answer to the next question, 192.185.57.42 or 242. 185.57.242. Now we want to know what file was saved to the infected host. So let's jump back into that capture, and we'll take a look here. So we've been talking about app.php. We know that app.php starts at packet 687, so let's just jump right to that response at packet 687 and start taking a look at that. And here, if we look at our text data, we actually see the app.php code. And if we scroll, read through, look at this, scroll towards the end of it, we'll see that effectively what this is doing is downloading a bunch of data, and it's going to save that data as this archive file, ref_September 24th-2020.zip. So that's going to be the file that is saved to the infected host. So let's go ahead and copy this value out. And I'm just going to drop this in Notepad to clean that up a little bit before we put that in as our next answer. So there we are. Copy this out and drop that in here. Okay, now next, the question is saying that attackers have used bad TLS certificates in this traffic, and we want to know what countries they were registered to, submitting the names of those countries in alphabetical order, comma separated. Okay, so for this, we're going to jump back to our PCAP. And there is a filter that we can apply here in Wireshark that's going to pull out all the packets that contain this data. So what that is going to be is X509 SAT. SAT, I believe, stands for Select Attribute Types or something along those lines. And then we can add a country name to that. And this is going to pull out all of the packets containing certificate data where that country name is present. So we could go through here, take a look at all of the country codes that we find in these packets, make a note of those, and then that's going to be the answer to this last question. However, let's just step back for a moment and let's assume that perhaps you don't just automatically know this particular filter. To be perfectly honest, I didn't know to just type this in whenever I was looking at this PCAP, but there's a number of things we can do in Wireshark that's going to drill into this kind of information. So I'll clear this filter out. When we're talking about TLS certs, we're talking about X509 certs as we just saw, but we can also, just like we did with HTTP, quickly do a filter for TLS and just pull that traffic out. And then when we do that, we can see, or we could look for any packets where we have certificate info. This second packet listed here includes that certificate info. So now what we can do is we can drill down into the decode and we can look for the certificate data itself. So we're just going to continue to drill down in here, get into the RDN sequence data, and eventually, once we kind of drill into this deep enough, then we're going to find that country code data. So getting in here a little bit further, subject RDN sequence. Okay, so we see the common name there. And as we dig through this kind of stuff, eventually we are going to arrive at the country code data. And I just got to figure, here we go. So under issuer, RDN sequence, we're going to see where we have country name US. We can even open this up a little bit more, find the distinguished name, and eventually we will make it to this value. Any of these will work for our purposes for what I'm about to show, but for any of these, you can right click on this, and then we can apply this as a filter. So let's go ahead and take that and apply the selected as a filter, and you'll see that that populates that X509 sat.country name, in this case equal to the US. So United States would be one of our answers here, but we can go ahead and just remove that to get back to the filter that I showed previously. All right, so now knowing this, we're going to just dig through these packets. We're going to look for these ones. I click on this next one, we see country name IL, that's Israel. So this is just the process from here forward. Looking through all of these, seeing how many of these country codes that we can pull out, and then that will eventually get us to our answer. If any of these are unfamiliar country codes, then you can also just use the Google machine to look those up and find out what they are rather. And I actually had to do that for this one here, SS. I wasn't quite sure what this stood for. Turns out that's South Sudan. So far we found US, Israel, and South Sudan. And I'll jump the gun a little bit here and say that there's one more that's hiding in here as we scroll through and kind of look at this data. There will be, if you scroll long enough and we can just maybe happen to find it, but I won't belabor the point, we'll eventually come across IE as well for Ireland. So in any case, that's the process for getting this final question, and we can go back and we can enter that. So we're going to have Ireland, Israel, South Sudan, and United States. Last question that we're presented with here is the host infected? Yes or no? I think based on what we've seen, that it is safe to say that yes, the host is infected. And that's going to wrap up the very first challenge here, this Wireshark practice, in our quest to retrieve the Tolkien ring and save Christmas. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys very much for watching. In the next video, we'll tackle the next challenge, work our way towards that Tolkien ring, and then so on and so forth from there. Until then, thank you again, everybody, and I'll talk to you later.